Good evening, my name is Steve Pereira and welcome to A Queer Idea on Bent TV. Australia's treatment of asylum seekers is notoriously appalling. Australia's treatment of LGBTI refugees is even, if that's more possible, even more appalling. Young Liberty for Law Reform is a group of young professionals and student volunteers engaged in law reform and advocacy projects. At the Midsummer 2015, Young Liberty organised a very important forum on the very particular plight of gay asylum seekers. Here to talk about the forum and the issues are David Sandbach and Evan Ritli from Young Liberty. Welcome, David and Evan, and my apologies for mispronouncing your name.
No problem. Thank you.
The issue for us is that Australia's treatment of LGBTI refugees, and in particular the transfer of gay men to nations such as Papua New Guinea, where gay sex is criminalised, is hugely problematic. Is that the central issue?
That is the central issue. As you're probably aware, Australia has a policy of mandatory offshore processing and resettlement, which means that any single adult male asylum seeker that arrives to Australia gets sent to either Nauru or Papua New Guinea for processing and then eventually resettlement. This is problematic across the board for both heterosexual and homosexual refugees and asylum seekers. But as you said, particularly for homosexual asylum seekers, because consensual sex between males is criminalised in Papua New Guinea.
Just to go back a step from there, so if I was a refugee and I came here on boat, I'd be intercepted, more than probably, halfway in the ocean, not brought to Australia, but then transferred to Papua New Guinea, where my claim for refugee status would then be processed by Australian officials?
You'd be transferred to Manus Island, which is a small island off the coast of mainland Papua New Guinea. It's not entirely clear whether you'd be processed by Australian officials or Papuan officials instead, because
we don't know that.
We don't, or it's very ambiguous in the sense that on the one hand, PNG law operates on Manus Island. Manus Island is part of PNG, whereas on the other hand, Australia's funding the detention centre, it's funding the security guards outside the detention centre. So it's not entirely clear where Australian law ends and PNG law begins. So
we don't know at either Manus Island or mainland PNG whether or not Australian law applies in these refugee centres, whether people are being processed.
We do know that on arrival, asylum seekers will receive a briefing in regard to the criminalisation of same-sex activity. So there has been reports of briefings with pictures of two men kissing with a big red cross through it. So they are, in this instance, Papua New Guinea law in this regard is applying in the detention centres. They're told that there's no sex between males is allowed in the centre itself.
So this is part of the general welcome to your hotel.
It's the orientation.
Don't kiss another man.
That's right.
Yes. Yep.
And that's regardless of whether or not you declare that you want to kiss another man or not.
Yeah, that's right.
It's everyone.
It's everybody. So, but if you were claiming refugee status on the basis of persecution as a homosexual, what happens to you?
It's a real catch-22 situation in that you have to, for the asylum seeker to claim refugee status, they need to disclose their sexuality and explain why they're making the claim because they've been discriminated against. Right. On the other hand, they face the risk of stigmatisation, discrimination by Papuan officials because of their sexuality.
But Australian policy does recognise persecution of homosexuals as a valid cause for refugees and asylum seekers, does it not?
Yes, it does.
Yes, it does.
So it seems to be inherently contradictory that you then send people who are claiming refugee status on the basis of persecution to send them to a country where they more than likely where they are being persecuted by law.
Yeah, it's a hypocrisy, pure hypocrisy, really. We think it may even be. Australia has an obligation to not send asylum seekers to somewhere where they're going to be persecuted again.
That's right.
And it's in breach of that obligation, I think.
So, but surely that is just a clear-cut legal issue then?
Yeah.
I think.
Why is it not? Sorry, you guys are you guys are law students, right?
That's right, yes.
So what's your semi-formed opinion on this then?
It's a legal issue in that there needs to be a reform to PNG's law as well as to Australia's laws in terms of resettlement and processing of asylum seekers.
Right.
It's a social issue as well because people who are gay and lesbian in PNG are actively discriminated against, stigmatised by Papuans, some elements of Papuan society. So it's a social issue in that there needs to be promotion or encouragement of a change in attitude towards people who are gay and lesbian.
But coming back to the central issue, whether or not these people are being processed under Australian, and we all know now this whole definition of Australia is the civil liberties, freedom of expression, freedom of, absolute individual freedom. Surely it's un-Australian in that fundamental sense to send them to send people to this country where they're going to be discriminated against. How we let that happen?
There's a lot of questions about how we let our policies get to this point. I mean, at the end of the day, it's a political question, and we would encourage any of your viewers to write to their MP and actually say, why are we doing this? How did it get to this point? We need to make change of this. Political pressure is key. It's a huge issue. It's not just the processing, though. As we know, eventually, if an asylum seeker is found to be a refugee, they will then be resettled in Papua New Guinea. And
so
in which case Australian law
no asylum seeker who's found to be a refugee in Nauru or in Manus Island will be resettled in Australia.
So either the person who is applying for refugee status on the basis of their homosexuality, or somebody who's just a refugee and happens to be homosexual, will end up in Papua New Guinea where homosexuality is criminalized.
That's one.
And therefore will be put at risk. So can they then apply for asylum from Papua New Guinea?
I'm sure they could. I don't know if that would be accepted or approved, but it'd be a highly politicised issue as well. I believe in the past we have accepted refugees.
From Papua New Guinea on the basis of sexuality?
Not from Papua New Guinea as such, but we have in the past accepted refugees who were claiming asylum seekers, claiming refugee status because of their sexuality.
There's so much more to discuss on this issue. Thank you, David and Evan, for that insightful. We're going to take this further. You've been watching Steve Pereira on A Queer Idea on Ben TV. Thank you for watching, and come back with us again.